Welcome to the Hyper Guy Motivational Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I have an amazing guest. I've been trying to get this guest on for like probably a half a year now, but he's so busy. His name is Jason Williams, and Jason is a doctoral student in chemistry at UCLA. He's an amazing researcher. He'll tell you all about that. He has his BS in chemistry. He's a bodybuilder. He doesn't like anyone to know that, but the guy is in great shape. And he's a Marine veteran. Thank you, Jason, for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really glad I got the chance to come on today.
No, thank you so much. I've been trying to get you on. It's hard to get you tied down just because you've got so much going on in your life, and also you're an amazing dad. So I know that's a real priority for you too. So I appreciate that. So okay, here we go. I'm going to go into. I kind of always start the same way, and everybody's kind of knows kind of my format is. One of the things I always ask is, where were you born and raised?
So I grew up in Southern California. I was born actually in Linwood, but we lived in Compton and Los Angeles, and I moved to Anaheim when I was 9 years old. Anaheim Hills.
And what was it like growing up? You said you grew up in Compton. Do you have any brothers and sisters? And what was your relationship like with your parents growing up? Jason, I think it broke up there for a
Yeah.
minute.
Sorry.
So what was the relationship like with your parents? And did you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah. So my dad had two kids when he was young, when he was 18. Those are my they were twins. My older brother and sister. They moved in with us. With my brother, my older brother moved in with us in Anaheim when I was 9 or 10 years old. When he was like 18, 19 years old. Um, and he basically, was in and out of my parents' house for, years after that. I kind of grew up with my brother, sharing rooms with him, my older brother. He kind of helped raise me in a lot of ways. Um, my parents, well, we had a good relationship. I was a mama's boy for the most part. I had a rocky relationship with my father, but we're good friends, and I, you know, uh, we respect each other very very much nowadays. So
So what were your interests growing up like? Were you always good in school?
no. No, I'm a terrible student. I'm still terrible. I mean, I'm not a great student. I'm a good researcher, but I'm not really that great of a student. I was so when I moved to Anaheim in the third grade, and I went from like a pretty brown and black school in Los Angeles. I actually went to Ascension. I don't know if you know, a Catholic school, not far from USC. Till I was in the second grade, third grade, second grade. In the third grade, I started in Anaheim, and I was one of the only black kids at the school. And before I moved to Anaheim, I was actually very, uh, I was like the ringleader, always causing trouble, like really loud, talk a lot. Uh, but as soon as I moved to Anaheim, I kind of shut down, and I stopped talking. I really didn't interact with anybody. I felt like a pariah, and I felt like I was the only black kid at school. So, and I did for years. So I kind of like I didn't. I can honestly like count on my hands, both hands, the amount of times I've done homework in my lifetime, like before I went to college. But I did spend a lot of time. I had a godfather who was he used to fix the computers at Cal State Fullerton. He was a computer guy, and he gave me a computer, or he gave one to my parents, but I was the only one know how to use it when I was 9 years old. And so I got a lot of.
Hmm.
Are you back?
Yes, I think it
So
broke.
I spent a lot of time just honestly trying to put games on the computer. So I learned DOS and BASIC and that kind of thing. And my favorite game was Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization. don't know if you heard of it, but Civilization 1 and 2. I was addicted to that game. I played it day and night, and I honestly believe that's where a lot of like not only my interest but knowledge about the world and economics and math came from, was just from playing the strategy game. I was in the geography bee twice, and it was all due to this game that I played.
So you went to the same school. Did you go to the same high school? Did you go to a Catholic high school as well?
I went to high school so I went to middle school in Anaheim, and then but I got kicked out of middle school and I ended up going to another middle school in Orange. Then I went to high school in Anaheim Hills at Canyon High School, and I got kicked out because of my grades my junior year, and I ended up at Richland Continuation High School, where I graduated a year later, like one time. But
You know, it's amazing to me because I kind of know a little bit of your story, and every time I talk to you, I learn more and more about you. But so essentially, I want to get this right in my head. You're a doctoral student at one of the best universities in the world in chemistry, but you graduated from a continuation high school. Is that
yes,
correct?
yes.
Yeah.
I had a like 1.2 GPA, I think, total high school GPA.
So, so what were your kind of interests in high school? Did you play sports? When did you start getting into the physical part of it? I know you're in great shape right now. I know bodybuilding is one of your hobbies. When did you start getting to the fitness? Was that in high school at all, or did you start doing that when you get to the military? And we'll get to that later.
Okay, so like as I said, when I moved to Anaheim, I didn't have a lot of I didn't make a lot of friends, and by the time I got into middle school, it became like bullying, like pretty bad. And I mean, I was bullied all the time, every day, and I think I was still playing football. Like I played football from for 5 years. Played junior All American, and then I took a year off in middle school, and then I played 2 years in high school before, my GPA, they wouldn't allow me to play anymore. But it was after my first year in high school. So my brother, as I said, was living with me, and he started getting into bodybuilding. He was living with an NFL player, like before he moved back. He moved out of my parents' house and moved back in, and before that, he was living with the NFL player who showed him how to bodybuild, like how to lift weights. And so he worked second shift, and he would come home at nighttime, like 10 o'clock at night, take me to the gym. 24-hour fitness have just opened up, and I would work out, like every night, a couple hours, like every night, till like midnight, 1 in the morning, and then go to sleep, wake up, and this is the true story. I was really into weightlifting because it was the only thing that I really enjoyed doing. Is only I got to do it by myself. I didn't really feel too comfortable being at home or at school, and this is the only time like where I really felt like I had time for myself. So I took it very seriously, and I went from bench pressing 185 to 365 from in a year, from 15 to 16 years old. I was the strongest guy at school, and then so the bullying kind of stopped like after. And it didn't even like even after I'd gotten strong, people were still messing with me until like one day, uh, um, some one of my friends, they had egged him on to mess with me, and I beat the hell out of him, and nobody messed with me. like
So that
from that
ended
point on.
that. That ended
Yeah.
that. And then so you said what were your high school hobbies was bodybuilding? Was there anything else? And did you have any mentors? I know you mentioned your godfather. Was there any? Did you have any other mentors growing up? What did your mom do?
We just my brother, my older brother was he got into bench pressing a lot. He was bench pressing like 500 pounds, and so I was just kind of trying to chase him in the weightlifting, and also I spent a lot of like I was kind of like the hustler guy at school. Like I sold CDs, I sold software, movies. I had CD burners. I spent a lot of time doing that. I built websites, and yeah, that's kind of what I spent all my time doing, like on the computer or in the gym.
It's amazing because you said you weren't good in school, but you had all these other hobbies and interests that you were very good at, and were almost like on the technical science side too, which is
Yeah.
it's funny how you ended up going this direction. So what was your goal when you left high school? What did you want to do?
Well, I just wanted to get away from everything really. Like I didn't want to, I was working right out of high school. I started working for a cell phone factory in San Diego. And I was actually making decent money. I was fixing cell phones, but for, you know, an 18-year-old. But I was still staying around my parents. And I just didn't want to be, I just wanted to get away from everything. I felt like like I had I felt like I was stuck. Like I should have been somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like I should be doing something else. So I actually started talking to the recruiter the day after September 11th at my continuation school. You know, before that, I used to make fun of her and you know, like try to make fun of her, you know, talk about her. But after September 11th, I started talking to her seriously, and I was in and out of the DEP program for about a year while I was working this job. And then I decided to join, um, I think maybe 4 months after I graduated high school, but I didn't end up leaving until another 4 months after that because I wanted a specific job. I ended up doing a nuclear, biological, and chemical defense, which seemed cool, sounded cool. That's you know that's kind of why I wanted to do it. I was always interested in physics, and but really just physics, atomic physics. And I always wondered, like I always used to think to myself, like how atoms worked, and I figured this would be kind of a step in that direction. You know, if I was ever going to learn science, then this would, you know, kind of be a step in that direction. So, um, of course, you know, it had nothing. It had, you know, it had a little bit to do with science, but it had more to do with warehousing and uh, and teaching classes. I taught a lot of classes when I was in the Marine Corps.
So
Yeah.
so you went into the Marine Corps. What was what was a boot camp for you? What was that
Boot
like for
camp.
you?
Boot camp was a life changing experience. It was uh, it 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 was it was a lot. It wasn't like when anybody had told me it was going to be like, but it was challenging, and I kind of appreciated that about it. Like I could see progress every day in you know, my ability to handle my emotions and my physical ability. Uh, Getting faster, stronger every day. I was a fat recruit. Like I went in overweight, and a lot of that had to do with just because I had muscle mass. But so I was a diet recruit, and yeah, I was, you know, dropping weight every week, and it was really stressful. It was almost like a dream, the whole process. Uh, but you know, I really appreciated it. I think it's probably one of the most helpful things I'd ever gone through. It helped me like really uh, whenever I go through any hard times in life. You know, nowadays I just kind of think back with those times, boot camp or maybe even like deployments to Iraq, and think that, you know, it's not so bad.
Yeah, and yeah, and I want to get to that. So, how long were you after boot camp? Um, you were deployed. You did a couple deployments in war zones, and what countries did you end up going to, and what were those experiences like for you?
So I ended up going to Camp Fallujah twice. I was well. What's really interesting is that I didn't know that I was going to go to. I mean, we had an idea that we were going to go to war, but we invaded Iraq. It was the second week I was in boot camp. Like they brought us all into the base theater and they showed us these news clippings, and at that point we all knew we were going to go. So it's not like when I joined, I kind of knew that there was a possibility of deploying, but after that happened, like we all knew we were going to deploy. Anyway, um, I deployed to Fallujah in 2004 and in 2006. And I deployed the first time for 8 months and the second time for 9 months.
And what was that experience like for you when you got there? And
So,
when you think back at those times, I mean, were you scared? What I mean, how did you deal with the stress? And I'm sure that there's people that you knew that lost their lives, or people that you know people that have lost their lives. What was that like for you? That experience for you?
So when I got to the fleet, as soon as I got to the fleet, I went to when I joined our shop. There was only one other person in our shop, Lance Corporal Chaparro, and he was getting ready to deploy. Like half the unit was getting ready to deploy. I was in Ninth Communications Battalion. It was the largest battalion in the Marine Corps at the time. I don't know if it still is, but they were doing back-to-back deployments because they were the only comm battalion in the Marine Corps that was actually ready to deploy. So it was a really stressful place to be. And I just remember everybody being stressed out. Everybody had already deployed in my battalion for like the invasion or like the subsequent deployment, and it was just something that everybody was. It seemed like a really dreadful place to be, based on what I was hearing from everybody else, and uh, so when I got out there, as we stayed in Kuwait, I think for a week before we flew into Iraq, and uh, I think no, the first time I went out there, we convoyed to through Iraq, and then we took a helicopter into Fallujah. But yeah, no, I was scared as hell from the time that we took our helicopter ride into Fallujah. Like we had to do, I guess, like combat drops or whatever. So like we dropped altitude really fast, and that scared the hell out of me. And then as soon as we landed, they got off and staged all of our gear and went to the chow hall. I was walking to the chow. Actually, I was walking to the shower, and I freaking saw a rocket flying through the sky next to me, and I mean not next to me, but up. I heard a crackling, saw a rocket. It was a 3 rocket volley, and I remember after that, like I was really scared. But then after that, like I just thought to myself, well, if I'm gonna die, it's just gonna happen. There's nothing I can do about it. So worrying about it really isn't going to do anything for me. And I think I kind of just got over it. That helped me get over it pretty quickly. Just the um, just the shock that I'd had for that like 4 to 6 hours before that and up to that point really helped settle me in. So I was fine after that. My second deployment, I was actually I had 2 jobs. I did hazmat, and I was a quick responder. So for MHG, Marine Headquarters Group. So anytime anything bad on base happened, I had to be there. We had like sirens on our Humvee, and we would help coordinate, like emergency services. Whenever people were injured outside the gate, we chaperone them to the medics and or the medical tents, and yeah, that was pretty stressful, but it was so fast paced that you didn't really have time to think about how like being scared.
Well, let me ask you this: like when you did respond to someone and you saw somebody injured or somebody had a significant injury or somebody died, how did you process that being so young, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, I think so. So that was the second time I was in Iraq. The first time I was in Iraq is when I kind of started dealing with uh, death, and so I was in Camp Fallujah. I got there maybe 3 or 4 weeks before Operation Phantom Fury, which was the assault on Fallujah, and we'd already had a couple people in my battalion that are in headquarters company that one was killed in the last deployment. We had another dude that died in an accident just a couple weeks before Phantom Fury, not too long after we got there, and uh, then we had this war going on. I wasn't there. I went to the city just a couple days before the invasion to hand out gas masks, and they were doing I guess they were doing the subsonic, I mean supersonic, like the jets were flying over the city. I guess it was some type of like it's a psychological operation with the sonic booms and stuff. And yeah, I gave a couple of claps, just basically showed a lot of guys how to use the gas mask. And then I got out of there. But I remember for the next week or so, you just see freaking just it was like Star Wars. Like I mean, we were not maybe 2 miles outside the city, and just lights. Just they were just lighting that place up. And but when I was doing the chaperoning uh, for the wounded Marines, I didn't really see them very often. They were in the ambulance, and we just kind of brought them uh, uh, to where they were treated. And most, I don't think when I was there the second time, I don't think we had many injuries. I don't remember actually any injuries from the incoming rocket or mortar fire. So I didn't see anybody hurt when I showed up to those.
What when you think about your military time, what kind of like leadership skills or skills did the military give you or you developed that helped you in your current career, like bring you to where you're at now? It seems like seems like you've always been motivated. It seems like you're very, very highly intelligent. Honestly, to me, in my own assessment, listening to the interview, is that it sounds like you were probably pretty bored in school because there was nothing interesting going on, and so you were doing all these other interesting things. Um, so, what was the military's impact on you?
Well, I think as far as classes were concerned, or like academics, I remember our our so when I was in NBC school, that was the first time I really ever had to study. And we had like group study sessions, things like that, and that kind of um, helped me with the academics. But uh, as far as leadership, hmm, well, all right. So I was in a unique position um, because our battalion was deploying so often. We were the only comp battalion that was ready to deploy in the Marine Corps. They kind of shuttled all of the billet spots outside of nuclear, biological, and chemical defense. NBC, that was where I worked, and they actually have their own acronym for NBC, which is like nobody cares. So they moved all of the staff outside of NBC, and it was just me and another lance corporal for until I left. They would send sergeants in every once in a while that were processing out, but to keep an eye on us. But we should have had like a warrant officer, a couple staff NCOs, but it was just me and Chaparro, so another lance corporal, until he picked up corporal. But so I was in this unique position where I had a $3 million account, and I mean after Chaparro left, when I first got to the fleet, I was the only person in this warehouse. I had to take care of shelf life inventory. I had $3 million account. I actually got in trouble, like because I wasn't reporting my gear properly. Like they read me my rights and everything. I was at all this responsibility. So actually I got to the point where I actually got the inventory under control for the first time in years. Like we had staff NCOs before that really just ran the place into the ground, and I fixed it. I also put together a series of classes, PowerPoints, and I had a recon team that I put together. I put together a training 2 week training program for the recon team, for a decontamination team. And I had a series of lectures for they have required training for NBC. Every Marine has to go through it annually, which includes the gas chamber. And so I also got to do the gas chamber for a lot of other groups that either didn't have NBC people or weren't ready for whatever reason. So I was doing, the gas chamber, right? The mass confidence chamber. I was doing those probably once every week or two. And I also got to do the midshipmen, which is really cool when they came to Camp Pendleton. Um, uh, yeah, so I was running $3 million account. I was teaching classes. I think altogether I had over 700 hours of instruction while I was in the Marine Corps. So yeah, that definitely helped a lot. And honestly, like I'm still not back to where I was then when it comes to teaching classes, and but I'm getting back. I'm regaining that confidence.
And then, so what happened? You went, okay, so you went from, how many years were you in the military? Then how did you transition to school and doing all these other amazing things you've been doing?
So I was in the Marines for 4 years. I got out in March 9th, 2007. And I was in school March 12th, 2007. So I got into two short term classes, like the half term, short intensive classes at Fullerton College. And yeah, I was in school 3 days after I got out of the Marine Corps. I got out on a Friday. I was in school on Monday. Um, and I was a real estate agent at the time, so I was doing that. I had my daughter was 9 months old. Well, she was born in October, 2006. So what's that? 7 months old. And I was married. I'd been married for 3 years at that point, and real estate agent, taking classes full time, and I did that for a couple of years until I got out with an AA in economics, and then I went to San Francisco State University shortly after that. Um,
And what did you, oh, before we get on, before we go into that, I forgot to ask you. I know there's a story you brought up before, Fort Carson. So you
okay,
got
so
you
I
have to
guess
you have to tell me that story before we move on.
Okay, so this kind of ties into where I was going with this. So I went to San Francisco State. I changed my degree to chemistry because I figured, I could learn economics in books. What can I do that I can't do anywhere else? Anywhere else? I guess I could learn chemistry at home, but the FBI doesn't take too kindly to home chemistry sets. So, so I decided to. It was a middle science. I figured it was the most useful industrially, like in industry. So I figured I'd learn. I'd get into chemistry. I liked science in general, so chemistry seemed like, um, uh, the most beneficial science for me to learn. But after my first year in school, I did terrible. Oh, I did great my first semester, but my second semester I didn't do so well when I had to take organic chemistry too. Uh, on top of that, my family was still living in Southern California, and the plan was for them to move up with me in the fall. I mean, in the spring, after I got established and stuff. But my ex-wife ended up getting a job and staying down there, so that was kind of a drag. And after that spring semester, I ended up coming back home and not going back. So I dropped out of school. And that was in 2009, I think, summer 2009. Then I went back. After that, I started living with her. I went back to school at Orange Coast College for a semester. I got failed out. I went to Cal State Fullerton after that for a semester, failed my classes. And then I dropped out again for the second time the next summer from Cal State Fullerton. Uh, and after that, um, I, uh, I, I started having flashbacks, and it kind of threw. I kind of lost touch with reality for a while. I had undiagnosed PTSD. Uh, you know, I didn't I didn't realize that I had an issue. I was just kind of chugging along after I got out of the Marine Corps, and and I was doing well until I wasn't. And but I what I was drinking every day, which I thought was normal. Because I kind of did that in the Marines too. But uh, that ended up catching up with me, and after I come back from to down to reality. I was divorced. I lost my car. I mean, I evicted. I was My car was repossessed, and I was living with my parents. I was there for a couple of years, and then, well, I ended up going to jail for assault. And while I was in jail, I started looking for places to stay because I didn't really feel welcome at my parents' house anymore. Uh, my cousin, who was in the army at the time, told me he had a place for me to stay before I went to jail. I wrote him when I was in jail, and he wrote me back saying that, yeah, sure, you can come up here when you get out. And so after I got out, I was only there for a month. I eventually pled guilty to resisting arrest, but but I went to I flew out to Colorado where he was stationed at. And then when I got there, I found out that he didn't have a place for me to stay, that he was getting separated out of the Army. And, but coincidentally, his roommate had just been kicked out of the Army, and his room was still open, unoccupied. So he picked me up from the airport and took me back to his barracks in Fort Carson, where I lived for the next 2 months, 2.5 months. And at the time, I had, well, what my cousin likes to refer to as bum locks. Like, after I lost my mind, the couple years before that, I just stopped caring about everything, and my hair was growing out. I looked like I was homeless, and I guess essentially I was when I was in Fort Carson, sneaking into and they had a guard shack, like it was like an apartment complex, kind of like a brick building apartment complex, where they had like 2-bedroom apartments all throughout, and they had a guard duty shack like in the entrance. So I had to get past this guard duty shack every time I had to go into and out of my room, which was a lot like, it was like being in jail again. But yeah, no, I did that for a couple of months. I got caught one time. They had some emergency drill, and two staff NCOs came into my room. They opened it up like in the middle of the night, and they're like, "Get up!" And when I got up, they were like, "What the hell?" They saw my hair, and then I cut my hair like shortly after that, and we ended up, when he got separated out, we ended up getting a place right off base. But yeah, that was the Fort Carson story.
And I'm sorry. So I know you kind of, man. I didn't realize you had shared some parts of your life with me, but this is very interesting. So you really have you've had a lot. You had some real points of your life where you had some difficult struggles. When you think back on those times when you said you didn't realize you had PTSD and you started drinking and you were homeless for a while, and when you think back on those times, what do you think got you through that to where you're at now? You're so successful now, and I mean, it's just an amazing journey you've had. What do you think brought you through that?
I would say I didn't want to let my daughter down. I feel like I've probably been like you know, whenever things got really tough, I would always just think that my daughter needs me, and so I feel like that's what kept me going forward. Um, I never wanted her to see me in a weak position. Um, when I was in car when I part of me moving away was that I was just in such a weak place that I didn't want my daughter seeing me like that anymore. And it was when I was out in Colorado that I got to a point where I wasn't seeing my daughter anymore. I didn't even feel like communicating with her because I just was so ashamed of myself. So I started doing what I did in high school. When I felt like I was at my bottom, I started working out again, and I figured if I could just do this one thing, well, I can build myself back up. I can get the confidence to know that I can do something. And so I think, and then from that point, the lifting weights and working out really kind of took over my life, and for the next couple of years. Um, uh, yeah. So I think that's really, it was my daughter and really weightlifting.
Yeah, focusing on like your fitness is so important to your mental health. It builds confidence, and it makes you feel good. It gives you that confidence that you can feel like you can do everything. So let me ask you this. So how did you get into you're an amazing researcher. So we have to hear this story about how you got to be such a good researcher, and then how you ended up getting your bachelor's of science in chemistry, and then getting into one of the top doctoral programs in the world. How did that happen?
Okay, so like I said, I started lifting weights. I got in really good shape, and I was doing that for a couple of years, and that's all I was doing. I was in the gym sometimes twice a day, every day, and uh, it was at one point, I was staying back at my parents' house, and my cousin, who was an engineering student, he came over to visit, and he brought his homework with him, and he had his calculus homework laid out on the table, and I was just looking at it, and I was like, this is really interesting. This is kind of fun. It's a lot of fun. It seems like a lot more fun than than a lot of other things that I've been doing over the past few years. So it was right then and there that I decided I was going to jump into a calculus class, and I did jump into like a short spring term calculus class at Santiago Canyon College, and I did really well. And then after that, I took a summer class, calculus two. I did well, and then I took the fall. I took calculus three, kept moving up the ladder. I didn't do so well in calculus three, but the next spring semester, I figured since I know this calculus, I take a shot at physics again, and I did so well in physics that they offered me a job at the school, tutoring for physics. So once I got that in, I reapplied for voc rehab. So I had that coming in, and I was working. And to me, honestly, like it reconnected me back with my days in the Marine Corps from teaching classes. Yeah, I got to be a mentor to all these kids. I felt really good about that.
And so when you so then what got you into this? So it's amazing because it seems like you've always been good in the sciences. It's a matter of you just had so much going on outside your life. Like you said, you had PTSD, you had all these other things going on, and then once you refocus down and like focusing on your fitness and focusing on your mission, which was to help your daughter, everything's kind of came together for you. When did you when did you figure out that you were good at researching? And how did you get into you mentioned to me that you got good in doing one type of research. And then how did that kind of um, grow into you getting into the doctoral program, right? Because you went from you had your bachelor's in science and then you went to a doctoral program. So you didn't get a master's, you went right to you went to the big time. How did that happen?
So okay, so after doing the working with the school for a couple of years, tutoring and doing SI, I I basically treated it as a job. I didn't expect to go anywhere with it. My grades were horrendous from going in and out of school, like over the years. So, but after taking so many classes, they basically kicked me out and said I'd move on. So that's when I applied to Cal State Dominguez Hills. And when I got there, I wanted to do research. When I was calling up to the school trying to see, hey, how can I get a research position? Nobody returned my call, so I figured I would just be, a high school chemistry teacher. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what the goal that I had in mind. When I showed up for orientation, I was the only chemistry student that showed up, so I got to talk to the chair of chemistry directly. And she asked me, what are your plans? And I said, oh, I'm going to be a high school chemistry teacher. She's like, you don't want to do research? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do research. How do I get into that? And then she said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, do you like doing bench work? It's like, yeah, I like bench work. I like, using my hands. And she said, do you like drugs? I was like, heck yeah, I like drugs. So then she said, oh, I got somebody perfect for you, Dr. Still. And it was really sneaky how I kind of got into the lab. Because with my GPA, he definitely wouldn't have took me taken me in if he knew what my GPA was up front. But so I stalked out who he was. I went up like to near his office, and I just kind of stood outside of his office for a couple hours until he went to the bathroom. He saw me looking at one of his posters, and he's like, "Oh, is that interesting to you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he took me in, quizzed me. I passed his little test that he had, and then I was in the lab. So 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 because of the matriculation agreement that they had at Cal State Dominguez Hills, I none of my science classes that I'd taken over the years counted because I hadn't taken them all at one school together. So I had to start all over again. From I actually started from calculus two. I had to take all my physics classes, all my chemistry classes, everything. So I was there for 4 years. But I was in this. But since I was doing research, I got into this program called RISE, which is a federally funded program to to help uh, um, historically underrepresented, populations get into research, and so I was getting paid to do research, um, and so it took me enough. Like I said, I had to take all my classes over again. So I was there doing paid research for 4 years, which really put me ahead of the curve. I think most graduate students, when they get into these programs, they only have at most maybe a year and a half of research. But I already had 4 years under my belt. I trained other students. And again, for me, this was like a job. I never expected to get into a PhD program. I was just working, and I was enjoying it.
So
I,
Jason, what kind of stuff were you researching, and did you work for a company, like a pharmaceutical company, or like did you work for a university?
well, I worked for, all right. So I worked in natural products research or drug discovery, which is so the first 3 years when I was working with Dr. Still, we were doing we were looking for anti-cancer drugs, specifically for brain cancer, from plants. So in natural products chemistry, we basically uh, we make plant extracts, fungal extracts, microbial extracts, and we do bioassays against different targets, drug targets, or say against cancer cells, and then we try to to identify the compounds that are responsible for hitting those targets or for killing the cancer cells. So it's a lot of separation and identification science. So uh, that's basically what I did for 4 years. I spent most of my time on doing nuclear magnetic resonance, mass spectrometry, um, HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography, and I spent a lot of time playing with solvents, making extracts. Um, so, so yeah, it's basically just looking for medicines from nature. That's what I do.
And 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 how do you like it? It seems like it's a real passion for you. When you talk about it, you're like you light up because you're so interested in research. Um, how do you like doing the research, and what do you think just ignites that passion in you with regards to research?
Well, I always kind of liked the idea of making something from nothing, and in chemistry and drug discovery, it's like you can just go outside and snatch something up, and you have something that's you put a little bit of effort into it, and you have something very valuable that you can pull out of it. And I think that's also the novelty. You're looking at something that nobody's ever looked at before, looking at it in a new way. To me, it just that's that it just I don't know that that's it. That's really what it's. I don't know. It's great. I really just like the novelty of it all. Just maybe having thoughts or ideas that nobody else has had before.
And it's interesting to me also because it also fits into your whole the other thing that drives you. When I was thinking about passions, because you're like into so much into fitness and health, and then this is kind of an extension of that passion, right? Because you're
Yeah.
looking for ways to improve health, and you're looking at nature, like things in nature to improve health and to improve medicine. So when you applied for the doctoral program in chemistry at UCLA, what was that process like for you?
Well, I didn't think, like I said, I didn't think I was going to get into any PhD programs. And part of the requirement of being in the program that I was in, RISE, was that we applied to 10 different PhD programs. I only ended up applying to five, but uh, uh, this whole time that I was in the program, like I wasn't doing great in my classes. Like I was having problems throughout those years while I was in at Cal State Dominguez Hills. So I came in with I didn't have the best GPA, so I I I was waiting for the time where when I would would apply for the PhD programs. I was waiting for the 3 years prior to that, to the time where I would have to let everybody down and let them know that I didn't get into any of the PhD programs. But I put a lot of time and effort into my personal statement, because for me it was almost therapeutic, kind of going back, because I'd never really thought about where it came from before, and just kind of going back and thinking about um, uh, like what drove me to get to that point. It really just helped me, like, figure out where I was, in my life. And so I put a lot of effort into that. And, from what they told me when I got into UCLA, they told me that I wrote my way into the school. So not only that, but I had I was lucky enough uh, to, to, apply for an electron microscopy program, just a couple years prior to that. Like right after I got into the RISE program and started doing research, I decided, I always wanted to see what atoms looked like. So I went and applied for electron microscopy summer program, and everybody thought, why are you doing this? It has nothing to do with chemistry or drugs, but I just wanted to see what atoms look like, and luckily, when I was applying for at UCLA, there was a professor at UCLA, very distinguished professor, Hosea Nelson, who had come across my application and actually, walked it through the process for me. He's the one that got me into the school. And it was because we were working on this new high throughput method of identifying natural products using electron microscopes. And you can actually find videos of him online saying that he was looking for organic chemists that knew how to use electron microscopes. And this isn't a small project. He's at Caltech now, but this isn't a small project. It was a breakthrough of the year in science in 2019. So yeah, serendipitously, I'd done the electron microscopy program. I was applying as a natural products chemist, and I was the perfect fit for this project. So that's what got me into to UCLA.
And then what's this doctoral program at UCLA been like for you? As this continued that journey? You're still doing research at the same time, and I think some people don't understand, when you're a doctoral student, you actually work for the university. You actually take classes and you're doing the research, and sometimes you teach classes. I know and you're doing some work at Caltech as well. I know. Um, uh, how's that process been like? What's that been like for you? And you said are you still focusing on trying to find cancer medications?
Okay, so the process it's been a lot. Every day has been a new challenge. It's brought new challenges. So like I said, the professor that had initially recruited me, Hosea Nelson, he went to Caltech before I even became a student, before I enrolled at UCLA. Now, if he would have waited to take the position after, then I would have ended up at Caltech instead of UCLA. But the person that he was doing this project with the electron microscopes as a joint project with another professor at UCLA, Yi Tang, whose lab I work in at UCLA. Yi Tang specializes in synthetic biology, and where they basically they work on taking genes from different organisms and putting them into engineered, like, microbial platforms in order to make those drugs for cheaper. So basically, the idea is that you can take genes from, say, a plant, for uh, a certain drug, and then you could transport those genes into a microbe, to have that microbe make that drug, by basically much faster than waiting for a plant to grow and making an extract from a plant, and you could make it in much greater yields. So the goal is to basically get to build these organisms where all you have to do is basically feed them, water and sugar and some nutrients, and then they can make drugs for you on a daily basis.
That's
So,
amazing.
did I answer the question? What was the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and so right now you're working on, like you said, creating medications and trying different natural elements from the world experimenting with them to see what kind of medications can come out of it. And so,
all right, sorry. So I went off track. So I talked about, all right. So, but my project between Yiting and so what I do is I'm still kind of doing the same thing. I'm isolating, identifying compounds, and which isn't a trivial matter. Like it's not easy to to take a complex extract. Each of these extracts, they have thousands of compounds in them, and to be able to like purify just one of them and then identify it from scratch, it takes a lot of effort. I remember I read a paper not too long ago. I don't have I forgot where I read it, but they said the average amount of time it takes to isolate and identify one unknown compound from an extract is 3 months, and the cost of $14,000. So yeah, it's a specialty, and it's a thing that I'm good at. But the project that we have between Yiting's lab and Caltech is to be able to identify these compounds for much more rapidly than that. So the platform that we've come up with, we can now identify as many as 10, 15 compounds in a single day. We can identify a single unknown compound in 30 minutes using electron microscopy. And we can't necessarily talk about the specifics of it, but our goal is to be able to hit 500 compounds a month by the end of the year. And then in the next 2 or 3 years, we want to get to like 5,000 compounds, be able to identify 5,000 compounds a month.
And this is all not only to identify them, but to see if they can be used in medications.
Well, the first step,
life-saving medications.
Well, yeah, the first step is to be able to identify the compound, though, and once we can identify it, then we know what we're testing when we put in a bioassay. So, I mean, we know what because I mean, you could do a bioassay with an extract and it could work, but if you can't identify with the compound that's in it, then that's not, you can't make a pharmaceutical, or you can't you can't really just use I mean, you could, but nobody's gonna, pharmaceutical industry, they put money into single compounds, so you need to have a single compound. An extract doesn't work.
So let me ask you this: if you had to give advice to somebody, what advice would you give them? What would the older version of Jason give the younger version of Jason in terms of advice? You're so successful at what you're doing, and there's so many trials that you've been through, Jason. You've had a very interesting life. You've had some difficult times, and you're so successful now. And that's one of the things I love about this podcast. It has amazing people that have just they've had this journey where they've just progressed and they've overcome difficult times to become successful. What advice would you give to somebody to get into fitness or to get into the sciences?
I would say like, I think the best advice I could give myself or any other person that was would be just to get really good at one thing. Like, just pick one thing, be the best at it, because once you learn how to get good at one thing, like you can kind of take that other places, and you get the confidence to know that you can be good at something, So I think that would be probably the number one thing. Just pick a thing, get as good as you can at it, especially if it's something that you're already kind of naturally talented at. You don't have to be professional. Just, build your confidence up, and then you can take those skills into other categories in your life.
If you could be one superhero, what superhero would that be?
Beast.
If you could meet one person in your life, and it could be any time in history, who would that be, and what would you say to them?
One person, any time in history. Lord, that's tough. Let's pick one. I guess I don't know. I like Malcolm X. I guess.
What would you say? What would you ask?
I would ask him for advice on how I should proceed through my PhD program.
And what's your guilty pleasure food wise? Because you're like fitness dude, so I got to see what this one is.
I like Danishes. I eat them more often than I should, and oatmeal cookies.
What's the best thing about being a dad?
uh, it's an anchor. My daughter's like my anchor. It lets me know who I, reminds me who I am. But sometimes, you get off in the world and you kind of, you know, you get caught up in other things. You kind of, forget who you are. But my daughter has always been my anchor. She always kind of brings me back to who I really am. Her father.
And what do you love about your daughter most?
Um, I, well, she likes all the music I like. She likes movies. She's a lot like me, so I guess I don't know. I guess that's kind of selfish to say that, but she's a lot like me, and I guess I kind of like that.
And then when you're no longer on this earth, what do you want to be remembered for?
um, I guess I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty tolerant person, or accepting and open. Like I guess just for that, I'm not easily like embarrassed, or I don't take things too personally. I think yeah, maybe just my openness and willing to share.
Well, I just want to tell you thank you so much for being here. I know that you're super busy, Jason, and and every time I speak with you, you're always discovering new things, and you're so dedicated to what you do, and you're such a good dedicated father. And I'm just very appreciative that you took the time today to do the interview and to come on the podcast. And you have to keep us up to date on all the wonderful things that you're doing. And thank you so much for what you're doing for medicine and for the future of different medications that you're going to be producing to help us live longer and more healthy lives. So thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thanks. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you like the podcast, welcome. Just go ahead and give us thumbs up. And looking forward to hear from you in regards to what your feedback is. And you know what? We're going to have other great guests. And in the meantime, keep learning. And thank you so much for being here. God bless and take care. Until next time.